The rise and fall of Baekje, Korea's forgotten kingdom. The kingdom of art lost to fire. In the mists of ancient Korea, there once stood three great kingdoms, Goguryeo, Silla, and Baekje. Of them, Baekje was the most elegant, the most graceful, and the one most often forgotten long ago. In the year 18 BCE, a young prince named Onjo fled the powerful kingdom of Goguryeo. He crossed rivers, mountains, and forests, until he and his followers reached the fertile lands along the Han River. There he founded a new kingdom. He called it Baekje. It grew quickly. Its location near the sea allowed it to trade with China and Japan. It became a center of culture, art, and learning. Baekje wasn't the largest of the three kingdoms, but it was the most refined. Its artisans carved beautiful Buddhas. Its scholars brought Chinese philosophy to Korea. Its architects built towering temples and elegant pagodas, and its ships carried Korean art to Japan, forever shaping Japanese culture. Even Japan's writing system and early Buddhism came through Baekje. But greatness invites envy, and peace never lasts forever. Baekje was often caught between its two powerful neighbors, Goguryeo to the north and Silla to the east. For centuries, Baekje fought bravely, sometimes joining Goguryeo to fight Silla, other times siding with Silla to keep Goguryeo in check. But in the 7th century, a powerful alliance formed. Silla joined hands with Tang China. Together, they set their sights on Baekje. In the year 660, the allied forces attacked. Baekje's king Uija had grown corrupt. His court was divided, the people were tired, and the enemy armies were vast. Baekje's cities burned, its temples were looted. Its royal family fled. The capital, Sabi, fell in flames, and with it, the golden age of Baekje came to an end. But the story didn't stop there. A few brave generals tried to restore the kingdom. For years, they fought in hidden valleys and coastal forts. They lit fires in the night and whispered the name Baekje like a prayer. But eventually, the flame faded. Baekje was no more, and yet, its beauty lived on in Japan's temples, in Korea's scrolls, in the golden crowns unearthed centuries later. Baekje was a kingdom of elegance, of knowledge, of peace, and though it was lost in fire, its legacy still flickers in the quiet corners of history.
The tragic tale of Princess Deoki, the last princess of Korea, forgotten by her country. She was born a princess, but lived like a prisoner. This is the story of Princess Deoki, the last royal daughter of the Korean Empire. She was born in 1912, just 2 years after Japan annexed Korea. Her father, Emperor Gojong, kept her hidden to protect her. But after his mysterious death, she was taken away at just 13 years old. Princess Deoki was forced to move to Japan. They tried to erase her identity. Even her name was changed. She was lonely, homesick, isolated in a foreign palace. Later, she was forced into a political marriage with a Japanese nobleman. She had a daughter, but her mental health began to crumble. She was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia and institutionalized. For years, she begged to return home. No one answered, until 1962. After nearly 40 years, she finally returned to Korea, but she was no longer a princess, just an old woman, forgotten by history. The March 1st movement, the peaceful protest that shook an empire. In 1919, Korea was not free. It was under Japanese rule, and people were tired of living in silence. Then, a spark ignited. On March 1st, 33 Korean leaders signed a declaration of independence, and the people listened. From Seoul to the countryside, millions of Koreans joined peaceful protests. They shouted, "Daehanduk Mansi," the long live Korean independence. And they held flags and they marched. But the Japanese government responded with violence. Soldiers attacked protesters. Many were beaten. Thousands were arrested. Some were killed. Even peaceful crowds were met with gunfire. To one girl, Yu Guan-sun, just 16 years old, was jailed and tortured for standing up for freedom. But the people didn't stop. Their voices grew louder. Their message reached the world. The March 1st movement didn't end Japanese rule right away. But it became a symbol. A spark. A seed of hope today. March 1st is remembered as the day ordinary Koreans. You stood together and said, "We will not be silent." They read it out loud. Students, farmers, merchants, children, they held hands. The Battle of Myeongnang, 1597. The battle where 13 ships defeated over 300. One of the greatest naval victories in world history. And it actually happened. In 1597, Korea was on the brink of collapse. The Japanese Navy controlled the seas, and Admiral Yi Sun-sin had only 13 ships left. 13 ships, against over 300 Japanese warships. Most people would have surrendered, but Yi Sun-sin was not like most people. He chose to fight. The Japanese fleet entered the narrow Myeongnang Strait. He knew the waters better than anyone. The currents were violent and unpredictable, perfect for an ambush. He placed his fleet in formation and waited. When the Japanese approached, he gave the order to attack. His ships moved like ghosts, fast and precise. The tide turned, literally. The current flipped direction mid-battle, causing chaos in the Japanese fleet. His small navy picked them off one by one. The enemy ships collided. Many sank. Others fled. In the end, he lost 0 ships and crushed over 30 enemy vessels. His 13 ships saved Korea. The assassination of Empress Myeongseong, Queen Min. The Queen Japan feared and murdered. She was bold, smart, and dangerous. To Japan's empire, this is the story of Empress Myeongseong, better known as Queen Min. She was born in 1851 and became queen consort to King Gojong of Joseon. But she wasn't just a figurehead. She was a fierce political strategist. When Japan started rising in power, Queen Min formed alliances with China and Russia. She was determined to protect Korea's independence. Japan saw her as a threat. On October 8, 1895, a group of Japanese agents and Korean collaborators stormed Gyeongbokgung Palace. They dragged Queen Min out. They stabbed her, burned her body, and tried to erase her from history. But they failed. Her death sparked outrage. Koreans mourned. Her courage became legend. The Donghak Peasant Revolution. When the farmers rose up, a story of faith, rebellion, and the cry for justice. In the late 1800s, Korea was a kingdom in crisis. The Joseon dynasty was weakening. The world was changing. Foreign powers were pressing in from all sides, and within the people were starving. Corruption spread like wildfire. Local officials taxed the poor mercilessly. Landowners grew rich while peasants suffered, and those who had no power had no voice. Until one day they rose. The birth of Donghak, a new religious movement, was quietly spreading through the countryside. It was called Donghak, Eastern Learning. It mixed Korean folk beliefs, Confucianism, and elements of Buddhism. But at its heart, it taught something revolutionary. All people are equal. To the oppressed peasants. This was more than a belief. It was a spark. The peasant army. In 1894, a wave of anger finally broke. Led by a man named John Bong-jun, farmers in Jeolla province picked up weapons. They were tired of starving, tired of corruption, tired of being ignored. So they marched. With bamboo spears and makeshift flags, they stormed corrupt government offices, burned down tax records, freed the imprisoned, and demanded justice. It wasn't chaos, it was organized. The revolution spread rapidly. Town after town joined the movement. Bong-jun's army soon numbered tens of thousands. And for a brief moment, the people felt powerful. The clash of empires. The Joseon government panicked. They asked China for help. In response, Japan also sent troops, eager for a reason to gain more influence over Korea. Suddenly, The peasant revolt became a battlefield for two empires, and the revolution was crushed in the crossfire. John Bongjun was captured. He was executed in 1895, and with him, the dream of a peasant-led Korea faded, but not forever. The legacy of the Donghak Uprising. Though it failed, the Donghak Revolution inspired future generations. It showed the world that even Korea's poor, the farmers, the forgotten, could rise up and demand to be heard. It was one of the first signs that Joseon was coming to an end, and that something new was about to begin. He was not a general. They were not trained soldiers, but for a moment, they stood tall. They dreamed of justice, and they gave everything for it. And though the fields returned to silence, their footsteps still echo in the soil of Korea. The invention of Hangul, King Sejong's greatest legacy. The king who gave language to his people. In the 1400s, reading and writing in Korea was nearly impossible. Unless you were rich, male, and educated in Chinese. The poor, they had no way to write their thoughts. No letters, no voice. But one king wanted to change that. His name was King Sejong the Great. He saw his people suffering. Farmers couldn't read laws. Mothers couldn't write letters. The spoken Korean language had no alphabet. So he did the unthinkable. He gathered scholars and secretly began creating something revolutionary. A new writing system. Simple, scientific, made for everyone, not just the elite. In 1443, it was complete. And in 1446, it was revealed to the world. It was called Hunminjeongeum, the correct sounds for the instruction of the people. Today we call it Hangul. It had just 28 letters, now 24. Each shape was based on how your mouth moves when you say it. Genius. But not everyone was happy. Many scholars and nobles hated it. They mocked it, called it the language of the uneducated. King Sejong stood firm. He said, "A wise man can learn it in a morning. A fool can learn it in 10 days." He didn't care about power. He cared about his people. Thanks to him, Koreans have one of the most efficient and logical alphabets in the world. This was more than writing. It was freedom. It was dignity. It was identity. The birth of modern Korea, the Korean Empire, and the fall of Joseon. From kingdom to empire, Korea's last stand before occupation, before the skyscrapers, before the war, before the division. There was a kingdom, and in its final years, it would rise. One last time. This is the story of the Korean Empire, Daehanjiguk, the final chapter of the Joseon dynasty, and Korea's last stand as an independent nation before darkness fell. Ijinje to Sunnivo, a kingdom in trouble. The 1800s were not kind to Korea. Western powers were colonizing Asia. Japan was rising. China was falling. And Joseon, the ancient dynasty that ruled Korea for 500 years, was caught in the middle. Inside the court, political factions were divided. Some wanted reform, some wanted isolation, and the people were growing desperate. But then, in 1897, a king made a bold decision. Ijinje to Sunnivo, the rise of the Korean Empire. King Gojong, tired of Chinese interference and Japanese threats, declared the birth of a new nation, not a kingdom, but an empire. He crowned himself Emperor Gojong and proclaimed the beginning of the Korean Empire, Daehanjiguk. It was a symbol of independence, a final proud stand to modernize and protect Korea. The capital, Hanseong, modern-day Seoul, was transformed. Electric lights lit the palace. A modern postal system was created. Schools opened. Telephones were installed. Streetcars ran through the city. Korea was changing. Ijinje to Sunnivo, But enemies were watching. Japan, hungry for control, began creeping closer. In 1905, they forced Korea to sign the Yulsa Treaty, making it a protectorate. And in 1910, after years of pressure and manipulation, Korea was fully annexed by Japan. The empire fell. The royal family lost their power. And for the next 35 years, Korea would live under occupation. The Korean Empire had lasted just 13 years, but its spirit never died. It entered to Sunnival, a legacy that lives on. Emperor Gojong died in 1919 under suspicious circumstances. His funeral sparked the March 1st movement, a massive protest against Japanese rule. Even in death, he became a symbol of resistance. Today, you can still see the legacy of the Korean Empire in the palaces of Seoul, in the royal portraits, and in the pride of a people who never gave up. The empire may be gone, but the dream of Korea lived on, in students, in protesters, in freedom fighters, and in you, because to remember history is to carry it forward.